Gore! Hoo-ha! What is good for? So we are talking about Green Inferno, a gruesome horror film by director Eli Roth. Now this one has been in limbo for a little while. I believe it was first released in the festival circuit in 2013, and then has only found its kind of wide release in 2015. Now this one is a gruesome tale, and it's very much influenced by cannibal flicks of the past, in particular sort of Cannibal Holocaust. And the Green Inferno apparently was the actual original name of Cannibal Holocaust, so this is why Eli Roth has called it that basically, and apparently this is one of the films that actually influenced him to become a filmmaker himself. Now I've read some quite interesting trivia about this film. Now just to give you an idea about the story, basically it follows a group of sort of college activists. You know, we've all seen them, we've all been approached by them, people who kind of seemingly just badger you into trying to kind of donate money and stuff like that. And they fly to the jungles of Peru to try and kind of stop this kind of redevelopment basically, and this sort of deforestation and stuff like that. So it does have a kind of ecological message. However, while they're there, basically they sort of encounter some, you know, before we kind of get into the kind of the gruesome bits, they're encountering some workers and things like that, have a bit of an altercation. However, their plane crashes and they end up stranded and are captured by these kind of these natives, basically, who take them back to the village. And they are, of course, cannibals. And it's basically a question who, or if any of them, will survive this terrible ordeal. So that's what you're going to go to this film for. Now it takes a little while to kind of until we get actually into the kind of the villagers camp here. The first kind of like 40 minutes or so is really just kind of trying to develop these characters and kind of making you care for them. And I have to say they certainly develop some more than others, and you think cannon fodder, because you're not getting any backstory. Once we get into this kind of the camp, apparently one of the things that they've actually done here to try and make this authentic as possible, they have actually used real tribes members of you know, obviously not a cannibal tribe, but to play these kind of natives. And the kind of, there's two kind of like main ones, the sort of the female chieftain and this kind of bald guy with like a, you know, weird face paint and all that. Again, they were all actual kind of like tribes members of this kind of tribe that are a little bit more civilized than obviously this one portrayed in the film. And the gore here is pretty damn gruesome. So if you are a gore hound and you like some realistic gore, then you will not be disappointed with this film, because let me tell you, there is some gruesome stuff that happens in this film, and I have to say the way it is shot is very realistic. So if you know, I'm not kind of freaked out by it, but if you are a kind of a little bit of a weak disposition, you may kind of want to avoid this one because it is kind of quite gruesome. There are a couple of negatives I would say about this film. First of all, my God, this film is so heavy-handed with its foreshadowing. It's like, haha, remember this bit about female genital mutilation? Remember this bit about ants? Remember this bag of weed? It's like it really kind of like hits you over the head with how these things are going to be important later, so remember this. And it's really obvious, and you feel like it's obviously just a kind of you're treating your audience like a bit like an idiot to a certain degree, because you're thinking this bit's going to be important later. And like I said, I feel the characterization on certain characters was a little lacking. You obviously only have a certain amount of time to obviously film this, and so you can't necessarily develop everyone sort of equally, but it would have been nice to have seen, you know, more than kind of two people developed, which I feel this really only did. But to be honest with you, the actual way this was shot, like I said, the beginning's a little long for me, but when you get to the tribes bit, I felt it was very compelling. I've heard some criticism saying it's not scary. Do you know what I mean? I feel like the fear of what could happen if you were to put yourself in this situation is pretty terrifying. I mean, I think people have got so used to kind of jump scares now that that's kind of what they expect, and that's what they put with a kind of like horror film, and this isn't like that. It's kind of, it is a really just a if you put yourself in this situation, you do have this kind of feel of, oh my god, if this was me, I'd be terrified and stuff like that. So that kind of the feeling of dread and the kind of the anticipation of what might happen in the second half of this film is what really kind of drives home this sort of terror. Because you think, man, what would you do? I'll try and escape, because they're they've got a kind of rolling rickety old cage that's meant to keep pigs in, but there's measures in place to stop you escaping. So to me, I disagree with that particular criticism. I did find this quite an unsettling film. Gore is handled extremely well. There are, like I said, there are a couple of bits that I've already mentioned. There's also a big kind of like final fight at the end between two opposing forces, which I didn't really understand, because it kind of just seemed to end with both sides going meh. And that kind of, I didn't really understand why that happened, if I'm honest. But with the kind of criticism, I won't repeat it basically, but the few criticisms that I said at the beginning there, versus obviously what I feel is, it's a decent horror film. Not your typical kind of jump scares that you kind of see from kind of modern horror films. I felt this was an effective kind of homage to the kind of the cannibal films that we kind of seen sort of 30 odd years ago, which is more or less a kind of forgotten subgenre now. I thought it was a decent addition to that. I actually quite like this movie. I did find some of the characters a little bit unsympathetic, even ones we were kind of supposed to care about, I have to say. But to me, it was a decent horror film. You're going to love it if you're a gore hound. I'm going to give this movie a 6.5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave a comment, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.